and chief scientist at the Creative Destruction Lab. And I'll just say that one of the moments at the lab that has been most interesting was, the Creative Destruction Lab lives inside of a business school, and there's just sort of a business school type environment. And we knew that things, I think the rest of the school finally recognized that the lab was doing something different than sort of business as usual on Bay Street the day Steve walked into the lab. So we were glad to have you.
Thank you. It's an honor to speak here. And it's been fascinating reading this book. At the moment I picked it up, I couldn't put it down. I actually read the whole thing, and I've actually read it a few times now. Great book. I would recommend reading it. I just want to read one quote. As computer systems are woven more deeply into the fabric of everyday life, the tension between augmentation and artificial intelligence has become increasingly salient. And then this is about us, about humans, and the kind of world we will create. It is not about the machines. I found this very fascinating to look at it, and out of all the books that I read, this one seems to hit it most strongly, nail on the head, about these two threads of AI versus IA. But I just want to take a departure. There's one issue that bothers me about this and has bothered me for years, since childhood, and the AI community and the IA community are not addressing. And I want to introduce something I call humanistic intelligence, which is a different way of looking at it rather than the two sort of parallel threads here, but it's very tightly interwoven, probably closer to IA than AI. Humanistic intelligence is intelligence that arises because of a human being in the feedback loop of a computational process where the human and computer are inextricably intertwined. When a wearable computer embodies HI, it gives rise to superhuman intelligence. This is a quote from a paper that Ray Kurzweil, Marvin Minsky, and myself wrote in 2013. And the Society of Intelligent Valence was the title of the paper, and it was particularly about valence and HI. And so HI humans have inputs and outputs, and machines have inputs and outputs. Together, humans and machines, if we think of them in the little dotted line box, have inputs and outputs. So there's 4 signal flow paths, but there's 2 very special ones that happen, and that is the one between the human and the machine, and those are the controllability and the observability. The controllability means the machine is watching us, and the observability means we're watching the machine. And if we think of the machine as being the superior being, the controllability is surveillance, which is a French word that means oversight, and the observability is surveillance, meaning undersight. And so, looks like the book cover here, if I sort of drop that on there. Humanistic Intelligence for Machines of Love and Grace. And so a little bit about my own work. Since the 1970s, I've been inventing, designing, building, and wearing these computer systems. And I brought this invention down to MIT to found the Wearable Computing Project at MIT, and a fellow named Mark Spitzer came to look at what I was doing, loved it, and made it my glass display, and then I said, oh, well, hey, that's neat, but you don't have a camera in it, you can't really help people see. And then he put a camera in it, and his company got bought up by Google, and so on. And so I've been inventing some of these things. This is my smartwatch I built in 1998. It was on the cover of Linux Journal in 2000. And this is we had a little startup in Silicon Valley called Meta. The website's getameta.com. And we just got a $23 million Series A investment round and expanding from about 40 employees to about 80 employees. And we just moved to a new location in Silicon Valley. And another of my students, and a couple of us founded this company called Interaxon, which makes brain sensing headbands, which we now sell in Best Buy stores all across North America. And there's another example. And I'm also a sculptor, and this is one of my sculptures. These are underwater pipe organs, underwater musical instruments that we install in civic landscapes all around the world. This is the Science Center, and so these are examples of machines of love and grace, shall we say. The hydraulophone, for example, is a machine in some sense that allows humans to be human. And so I just want to think very broadly beyond just artificial intelligence here. This is, when I was 12 years old, this is a wearable computer that I built in a wooden box, which is probably a bad idea, but it still works after 41 years. And what it did is it was for augmented reality. I had a forward, reverse, and I could do different things with it. And it picked up signals and made me able to see radio waves and other things. Here's a surveillance camera. I was kind of obsessed with this idea that machines could see me and I couldn't see them. And so I built this machine so that I could see what the machine sees. And so these lights that I swung through the space in the dark room when I was 12 years old were glowing so that I could see what the camera sees. And here is looking at radio waves, so I can see with this apparatus I was able to see radio waves. And the radio waves move at the speed of light, but if I want I have this way of making them sit still, and I call this sitting waves. It's like down boy, sit, sit. Now the wave is sitting. We all know what standing waves are on a skipping rope or a violin string. That's a standing wave. And here's a standing wave next to a sitting wave. The standing wave is a superposition of waves traveling in opposite directions added together. A sitting wave is the product of waves traveling in the same direction. A sitting wave is a term I made up for this phenomenon that I kind of implemented. And so here's the apparatus at the National Gallery, 35 lights hooked up to the wearable computer and a Polaroid camera so I could visualize radio waves instantly. After 41 years, it still works. This is with LEDs, and you can still see it. And so I made all these kind of smart watches and everything. And see if my machine's still, there it is. And if I have take up my cell phone here and go like this, can everybody see the radio wave? So we can see all these waves that we're being irradiated with. And of course, if I want to do this, I can go like this and see stop quotes and see what time of day it is. And that's kind of boring compared to being able to see radio waves. And here it is seeing surveillance cameras, so I can see what the camera can see. And there's all these cameras and mechanisms all around us, and this allows me to see them, so I can see all this intelligence that's watching us. And Kurzweil, Minsky, and I argued that it's really the sensularity, not the singularity, that we should fear. So we coined the term sensularity, which means a sensory singularity of sorts, and that's upon us right now. In our building, there are no longer any hand wash faucets or urinals and toilets that don't have cameras in them. And the pixel count is low. There are only 128 pixels or 1,024 pixels. But still, we have these machine intelligence watching us. And so the sensory singularity is upon us. And what really bothers me about this is the opacity. That this is a radio from 1951. And when you look in the back of it, there is no back. You can see right inside the back. There's glass tubes, valves, and you can see right in the valves and understand how they work. I grew up in this world, and there's even a schematic diagram on the side. The manufacturer went to extra effort to make this transparent and understandable and comprehensible. And likewise with television in the early days. But in the 70s, here's a burglar alarm I took apart to see what it was irradiating me with. There's radiation because I wanted to understand it. But the numbers were ground off all the chips. The manufacturer had gone deliberate extra effort to make it opaque and incomprehensible. So we went from the manufacturer spending the time to make it easy to understand to now the manufacturer taking the extra time to make it difficult to understand. So we live in the dark ages from the 70s onwards, roughly. And so we see this around us. These machines want to watch us, but we're not allowed to watch them. This is a kind of typical scenario of the real world that we're in. We already live in this one-sided world. My 6-year-old made it really clear the difference between surveillance and surveillance. And I don't know if there's anybody who can't understand that. Surveillance, which means oversight, is the valence of hypocrisy. The machine will watch us, but we're not allowed to see the machine. Surveillance, the opposite of hypocrisy, is integrity. Instead of centralized, it's distributed, from secrecy to openness. So one application we're doing is using surveillance for financial institutions. We're creating a system that allows banks to protect themselves from false accusations of wrongdoing. So typically an ex-employee, a disgruntled employee, or a blogger or somebody might come up with some baseless allegation against the bank, false accusation. A sensational newspaper expose causes a run on the bank. Eventually the bank is cleared of wrongdoing in the court trials, but meanwhile they're completely ruined through no fault of their own. Surveillance is little data that enables real-time forensic self-auditing for instantaneous defense. So this is an example of the economic value of humanistic intelligence. And imagine a dystopian future when we all walk around. Our governments and industry leaders hide their cameras in these domes so we can't see which way the camera's looking. Imagine if we all walked around with these bubbles around our heads so that I could stand like this and I could pretend that I'm facing you, but I'm not looking at him. Do we want to live in that dystopia? It's already upon us. Humanistic intelligence is a technological framework for self-determination and mastery over one's destiny, a new synergy between humans and computers, a true extension of the mind and body. That was a quote from my 1997 paper, and it's pretty much affirmed very, very similar to that quote. We believe AI should be an extension of the individual's human wills, and in the spirit of liberty, as broadly and evenly distributed as is safely possible. So very, very similar. So I feel sort of vindicated now that there's an organization that kind of is thinking very much like this. So in concluding, I want to say that humanistic intelligence has 6 signal flow paths. Most systems now, whether they're AI or IA, only have 5 of those. One of them is missing. And these systems are machines of hateful malice, the opposite of machines of love and grace. And I say if you break one of those links, you don't have HI, or if you weaken or delay one of those links, you don't have HI. And so I want to just conclude by simply saying that what we need is the future of humanity demands humanistic intelligence. It demands observability in the feedback loop control system that's formed by HI, which is intelligence that arises by having the human being in the feedback loop. It's a computational process. So give us HI rather than AI or IA.